Well, first, thanks everybody for taking the time to come out today. I know it's a nice warm summer day. It's a Tuesday. We like to spend time with our families, so appreciate you guys taking the time and spending it with us. Again, as things heat up outside, they're also heating up in here because we're going to be talking about cyber and that whole situation. And I tell you, it is a hot topic, and we're going to dive into it. And I know that term cyber is kind of thrown around a lot. You hear it online, you hear it in the news, probably hear about it every day. But what is that? How can it affect us? Well, that's what we're going to dive in and discuss. But first, I'd like to just kind of go around the room, if you don't mind. We'll maybe start here. I love those red shoes. We're going to start with you. Just a quick introduction of who you are, who you're with. Nothing fancy. That's pretty flexible. I like it.
Sorry, everyone was trying to point out, and everyone's like, I'm Molly. I work at the Women's Resource Center. We're a domestic violence shelter in Radford, Virginia.
I'm Stephanie Bell, Foresight Design. We were formerly engaged in the we changed our name last year. Civil engineering surveying.
I'm Eric Gilmer with Nanosonic down in Middlebrook. We primarily do research, various types of materials.
Wes Wilson, network engineer, security engineer. I know. Faces, yeah.
Hi, I'm Ashley Perry, and I work with the Community Health Center of the River Valley. We're a federal development community health center.
I'm Ryan Hendricks. I'm Executive Director for the Peppersfield Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant, and we're over in Fairlawn.
Rachel Potters, Lawyer Financial.
Who are you?
I'm Bill Gilmer. I'm with WordSprint. We're a marketing company. We focus on data-driven marketing and fundraising campaigns.
I'm Hanson Ball. I'm with Newer Computing. I'm Jeff's business partner.
Connie Littles, IT Director for Wall Residences.
Todd Forth with Managed Growth, and we do ag risk management for producers in the Midwest.
I'm Leo Outland. I'm also with Managed Growth.
I'm Mo McClanahan. I'm retired law enforcement, and now I work with the National White Collar Crime Center.
I'm Eric McClanahan, and I'm married to her.
What do you do?
I'm a law enforcement officer in the town of Kirstensburg. I'm currently assigned as an SRO at the Kirstensburg Middle School.
Well, appreciate that. Appreciate everybody coming again. Before we dive into the cyber talk, we're also certainly introduce our esteemed panel that we have here. First, we'll start off with Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie Suarez. I work for a company called Connectwise. We're a cybersecurity software company. And I actually started my career as a software developer and moved into cybersecurity. And I do things like this where I come and I give cyber talks to just educate people on what the threat landscape looks like.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Suzanne Pierce. I am an attorney with CowanPerry. We are a boutique law firm. We have offices in Blacksburg and Roanoke. I'm a business attorney, but I specialize in intellectual property and data protection. You may hear a little bit of a funny accent. I originally am from the UK, from Northern Ireland, and I started my career over there. So GDPR made sense to me, nobody else. As a European, it made sense. So yeah, I have kind of fallen into this area where I specialize in that. And my husband's a web developer, so it makes sense, right? That I have this interest. So I'm excited to be here this evening.
Jeff Wynn, I'm Hanson Ball's business partner, and we do IT services for companies and municipalities and nonprofits.
Cool. Well, appreciate that. I am Jeff Nosenzo. I'm the other Jeff in the room, if I get this thing to work. But I am with Brown Insurance. Oops, sorry, obviously not IT. But I'm with Brown Insurance, the vice president over there. I do a lot of commercial business insurance, so but I also do personal lines too. So general liability, workers' comp, inland marine, business personal property, you name it. Brown Insurance does it. Really.
And cyber.
And cyber, true, yeah, absolutely. But I kind of think of ourselves as like the target of insurance agencies, whereas we might not have, we might not be the cheapest out there, but we're going to give you the best product, the best coverage that we can find, and so that's what we do.
I have a question.
Yes.
What area are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, there's not a lot of hair for sure. I do have it on my face though, a little bit, but you know. You just see my back though. No, I'm but anyway, let's move on from that. Now that we know everybody's names and who has hair and who doesn't, let's start with Jeff. For the purpose of this discussion, let's just briefly describe cyber. What are we talking about? Web pages, email, text messages? What do we got?
Yeah, so that term's kind of morphed in my mind in the last 5 years or so. Cyber originally was anything having to do with computers, but now it seems to have morphed into more of the cyber threat landscape, the protections against those cyber threats, the bad actors, the risk mitigation through insurance, tools that we can deploy to protect, steps we can take for compliance and stuff like that. So this whole cyber thing is morphed from, hey, just computers, to a whole big landscape out there.
That sounds
what
great.
you're getting at.
No, that's perfect. That's great.
I'd like to hear Natalie's answer to that.
Do you want to add to that?
Sure. Bottom line is really, and you said it, it's all about risk. A lot of times people think of cyber as a cost center when they really should be thinking about it as how they're managing their risk.
So we know what cyber is. We hear a lot about this risk, but let's talk about it. Let's dive into maybe some of that risk. Suzanne, can you give some examples of maybe some cases or claims that you've heard of or seen that involve maybe cyber?
I think everybody has heard, if you're reading newspaper articles, right, where they're talking about these breaches, especially data breaches are just so important from a legal standpoint, because companies there's more and more data protection laws, and so, if a company does get hacked or there is some sort of breach, there's a lot of cases now popping up. They've just increased, oh my goodness, so many folds over the last 5 to 10 years, and so it's becoming such a big problem. And you're having large companies where they are getting, they're having their security breached, and it's millions of dollars. If you think about GDPR, like it's €4 million is at risk fines wise. So there's just many cases of large companies across the world who are facing these breaches, and then they are facing the courts and coming up with huge fines to pay. So
this might be an odd point, but I don't know. I think of it as, man, if they're breaching these large companies, who you would think have very large and robust
resources,
resources and IT security teams, how do the little companies stand up?
Right.
Can they hang in there? No, I'm guessing not.
Yeah, but there are things you can do, and that's obviously what we're going to talk about tonight. But from a legal standpoint, the reason we're talking about this tonight is there's key things at risk for your company if you do not have that security in place. Like we're talking reputation, which is the make or break of your company. We're talking about fines that I was just talking about. If you're facing fines, even in Virginia, their data protection law, it is $7,500 per count of a breach. So you're talking about that, you're talking about breach of contract. If you have technology contracts or any type of contract, there is requirements in there that you protect your data, and if you don't, you're in breach of contract, and it could be with numerous companies that you're doing business with. And if you want to sell your company later on, this could be something that you have to disclose to the company that want to buy your company. It's just the ramifications can be so much more than I think we maybe think of when we're reading these cases in the paper, where it's Google getting, Google has been in court in the EU facing millions and millions of euros fines. We think about them, but we're not thinking about the smaller person, and as you say, where something like this happening can close your doors, right?
Yeah.
And it's not always those companies in Nova or those big names we hear about. I mean, Bill was bringing up the Bluefield.
Yeah, one of our clients, Bluefield University, got hit with ransomware 2 or 3 months ago, but it was a nightmare for them. I can tell stories and stories, but yeah. It's,
Unbelievable.
yeah, it was really interesting. They had cyber insurance. This is one of my questions for the panel. Should you have cyber insurance or not? We were discussing it, and one of our new employees is actually a former IT person at Bluefield. So he was there when all this was happening. And he said, yeah, you should get cyber insurance, absolutely, because their insurance company paid the ransom, or part of it, or whatever. They did all the negotiations. But then he said also, you have to realize that these hackers, these ransomware people probably go after people with cyber insurance, because they know they'll get paid.
Oh, I have some of those there.
I asked him, I said, well, Josh, how would they know we have cyber insurance? He said, Bill, you're stupid. They're hackers.
They see.
So that's a question for the panel. Should we have cyber insurance, or is that just a
No,
flag up?
you definitely should have cyber insurance, but the thing is what I recommend when I talk to people about what things they should have, I'll tell them one of the things you should have is an incident response plan. Your incident response plan should not be stored with all your other documents. My grandfather was a Marine, and he taught us as very little kids that you never warn your enemy what you're about to do. So if the bad guy gets in your system and gets your incident response plan, they're going to know what you're going to do.
Right.
So same thing with your cyber insurance policy. If you're storing your cyber, you should have extra protections for your incident response plan. You should have extra protections for your cyber insurance policy.
Okay.
They just shouldn't be stored in your random data store.
Or at your insurance company. Right.
Well,
Around insurance company.
I mean, they should have, they're subject to privacy laws too.
Right.
But the thing is you don't want those things easily accessible, and you should have those things are things you should have in hard copy in a safe somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess one of my responses to that would be, I guess, in using similar thought by that, I would assume that any business in this facility here has general liability insurance. So by that, why don't I just walk in the front door and slip down and fall? It's kind of the same,
I mean, think of it this way, before COVID, we never had to budget for masks, hand sanitizer, Lysol wipes out the yin yang, and now we think about those things and we pay for them because it's all about managing your risk.
Okay.
Well, now that I'm completely freaked out and probably want to just unplug all my computers, maybe go back to paper instead of paperless.
Rock and chisel.
Yeah, exactly. What are things that we can do, Natalie, to maybe help protect ourselves? I hear about MFA. I know some acronyms like LOL. I think I've been called an MFA before. What is MFA? What can we do to help ourselves in this scenario?
So the important thing to realize is just like the analogy I gave you about COVID is things have changed. You do need multi-factor authentication. It's not the end-all be-all. Multi-factor authentication is when you go to log into say your Office 365 or your Google account for your documents, it'll be prompted for an additional code. That can be from your phone, from an SMS text, which is not the method I recommend you use. Or it could be an authentication app. I use something called a YubiKey, which is an external hardware token, which is actually the best thing you could use. But it's really important because we've really moved at this point in stage in our lives from prevention to detection. Yeah, those are on my keychain too. You need to be able to detect, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because it's not like when I started my career more than 25 years ago, it's all been 22. To be a bad guy, you had to understand networks. You had to have a very deep understanding of networks. You had to be a software developer. That's just simply no longer the case. These bad guys, we call them threat actors. They're not acting though. They're organized crime, they're gangs. Not only do they have the really smart people who create these things, they make these things available for sale on the dark web. So anybody who can any one of us in this room can very easily access the dark web. I don't recommend it if you're faint of heart because you're gonna see pornography, you're gonna see drugs, you're gonna see all kinds of stuff for sale that you probably won't be able to unsee. But some kid in his mom's basement or her mom's basement just has to get a Tor browser, the Onion router, connect to the dark web, use some cryptocurrency, and buy whatever they want. And once they buy it, guess what? There's YouTube videos or DarkTube videos, whatever you want to call them, that tells them how to use it. There's customer support, so if they run into an issue, they can call and they can get the answers they need. These bad guys run payment processing centers. They're full organizations. So you have to have defense in depth. So that would be your incident response plan, your multi-factor authentication, your endpoint detection and response. And I don't have time to go into all these technologies, but I'm happy to talk to you more about them. I'm sure Jeff is too. Managed detection and response, a security security information and event management system, which basically takes all the logs from your network. The EDR, you can think of that as what protects your workstations or your laptops. The SIM is where it protects more of your whole network, your whole infrastructure. And I'm forgetting one. Oh, backup, disaster recovery, which is much more than just backup. And then cyber insurance, and guess what? To get a good rate in a cyber insurance plan, what do you have to have? Everything I mentioned, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, I've got people here thinking about those pushes that some of these authenticators give us. Do not click OK on your authenticator unless you're trying to log into something, because the last incident we were involved with was a multi-factor fatigue attack, right? And it's just clicking on the wrong thing, you know, wake up in the middle of the night, you know, dismiss. Well, oh, I hit accept.
Yeah.
So please don't do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't bring it with me here, but I can show you attack after attack that are available for sale on the dark web that can defeat multi-factor authentication. So if you don't have an endpoint detection and response that can catch that, and that's not antivirus, that's not antivirus and steroids, that's something that detects behaviors and can alert you if there's a behavior that's not normal. Unless you have that SIM that can catch those alerts, MFA can be defeated alone. And password managers too, check password manager.
No, that's true.
And you all heard software as a service, right? That's a term everybody's so familiar with. Ransomware as a service is
Phishing
a
is a
thing.
service, ransomware is a service,
Right.
anything is a service.
I don't have to be an
that you
expert, I
purchase.
could just go apply stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say too, I mean, oftentimes people will say, you know, hey, why is that a requirement? Well, I mean, cyber is such an evolving thing. I would say a couple of things to it. One, if you don't have any of that stuff, I guess the question I would ask is, why wouldn't you want to have any of it? Two, if you're looking for cyber liability insurance, I mean, I hope you got a boatload of money, because nobody's going to want to write that if you don't have any of those things. And if you do put some of those things in place, then yeah, then you're going to have more likelihood of getting more competitive quotes when it comes to like a cyber liability insurance in a plan. You know, I guess, I don't know if we should jump to it now, or let's stick here for just a little bit. Are there any standards, Jeff, that are available for businesses to make sure their bases are covered?
First off, don't fake it on your application for cyber liability insurance.
Please don't.
Make sure you got accurate information on there, because they won't deny coverage. If they find out, oh, I really didn't have a backup, why not? So repeat the question again, make sure I...
Yeah, I was just talking about other standards that are available for other businesses.
Yeah, I super like the Cyber Center for Internet Security's framework. It's not as complicated as many frameworks out there. There's like 18 things, each with a couple of items. If everybody's doing those things, you're going to be running a lot tighter ship. There's other folks here that are in different compliance regimes where they've got their own stuff to do that goes above and beyond. But I think at a minimum, I love that Center for Internet Security's standards.
Okay. What, this is kind of a hot topic out there, everybody loves it. Maybe I should just go on and ask maybe ChatGPT, hey, what should I do for cyber liability insurance? Let's talk about ChatGPT. I mean, that's a hot thing right now. I'm gonna leave that to all of you to weigh in on this thing. I mean, some people are using it to write emails. There may or may not have been some people that have used it for case law. Yeah, so let's dive into that.
Oh, sure.
Who wants to go first?
I will. So I just opened ChatGPT on my phone, and I just told it that I was creating a workshop to teach people about phishing emails, and asked it to write me an example phishing email, and it did. And it has perfect grammar. And then I said, well, can you show me another example? And it wrote another phishing email. And can you imagine what kind of phishing emails this could write if it had access to all your data that's been breached by Home Depot, by Target, by Facebook, by Amazon, by Google? Should I continue?
Even publicly available stuff on LinkedIn. Hey, go look at Natalie's profile on LinkedIn and construct an email with some of her interests in there.
So my advice is never click on anything. Seriously, don't. Seriously.
Unplug, like Jeff said.
Yeah.
Surefire.
No, you should never. I mean, if you get an email with links, you could mouse over links to see where they're going to. But if you get an email that says, hey, your Office 365 has been breached, you know the URL to Office 365. Don't click that link, go directly to the source and change your password there. And you know, if it was a phishing email, so what? You changed your password. If it was a real email, so what? You changed your password. You know, and that's one of the methods they use to defeat multi-factor authentication, where they're using proxy servers. And what a proxy server is just a server that forwards information from one server to another. And they use a proxy server, and the end user can't see this. And it grabs that whole chain of information, your username, your login, which, oh yes, it is all encrypted. But guess what? By the time they get to the last step where you provided your MFA, they don't care what your MFA token is, they don't care what your username is, they don't care what your password is, because that creates something called a session cookie. And that session cookie contains everything that threat actor needs to be you and to access your Office 365 or your Google or whatever. But ChatGPT, anything that can be used for good can be used for bad. And I use it strictly for fun, but I could create even more. I created about 4 phishing emails for a client the other day in less than 2 minutes.
What kind of client you working with?
I can tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. It was a training thing.
Right. What about you, Suzanne?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's impressive, but there are just so many legal issues with it as well. You know, you have your fear of, like, what can you do with that information? Like, fair enough, it helps you write an email, okay. But beyond that, you should not be using that or incorporating that somehow into your product or something like that, because you have a question of proprietary information there. And so it creates a lot of issues on that level. Also, who's responsible if you use something from it and it does not work out and there's a client annoyed at you, or you know, you've breached some contract of some sort, it's you only on the line. So from a legal standpoint, it's definitely a use with care, and please just actually don't use it in your job at all. Because it's just the ramifications of it, it's not wise. It's for fun, yeah, see what it can spit out, it's amazing technology, but beyond that, it's not a wise move legally.
You know, I've used ChatGPT to help me construct emails from time to time, but they need to be checked, right?
Right.
I've once asked for 4 paragraphs, it spat out 5. Well, if that basic of a request out of this thing is failing, what about the details? So that would need to be checked. All kinds of things were happening. One of our software vendors is talking about buying an instance and just feeding it all of our ticket information, so that the first line of defense is going to be this OpenAI chatbot that tries to solve your problem without even a human getting involved. I don't know, it makes me feel a bit, I don't know. Maybe not yet. Maybe it'll be fine. I think it remains to be seen.
Also, you have to be so careful about what you're putting in there, because if you're putting people's personal information in there, that's technically, you know, a data breach. Like, that's not within, you're putting that into open source software. It's, you know, that's just risky in and of itself. You need to red flag.
Right.
Yeah.
And the current ChatGPT has been trolling the internet since like 2020. I forget the exact time it did, but there's copyright. What's it feeding? So I don't know.
Or maybe it's just making stuff up.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I love it.
We started this conversation out with Natalie mentioning hover over that link. And Celeste, there's a slide on SLAM here somewhere.
There we are.
Is it okay? So this is, it works. I got my dad using this, right? So Cinder, look at the email address. Is it Jeff Hoover computing from 1 instead of 9? I don't know. Look at it carefully. Look at those links. Hover over the link. Is it really taking you to Microsoft.com or some other obfuscated name? Look at the attachments. You know, hey, I'll never complain when somebody fires back at me, hey, did you send me this? Is this really you? Yeah, it's me. Or no. Messaging, misspellings, out of character phrasing within the body of the email. So with the advent of this AI, that messaging is going to get a lot better. So be aware. Use those first 3 on that list when you're questioning emails.
So
that's good. I like that.
Jeff, is that so, you know, you guys are, everybody's pushing us towards cloud-based. Everything's cloud-based now, right? So which pushes us to share information in the cloud. So is that gonna work when I send a link from, I mean, like, you know, sometimes these links are a million miles long. You know, is someone gonna know that this is gonna come from TFRW? Do you have to know everybody's URL?
So I feel like you're not running the infrastructure that I would be logging into, so you're not gonna be able to phony up your name thinking you're Microsoft or something like that. Cloud has a lot going for it. Broadly speaking, is your information safe there? I would argue that Microsoft, the Googles, the Amazon can hire people of such caliber to protect your information. It's way better than we're ever gonna be able to do for you as a little IT company.
So the cloud is safe.
I wouldn't do that.
Nothing's safe. Nothing is safe. And there's new technologies to monitor that. There's the concepts of zero trust. You may have heard zero trust. And that's a concept or a framework that is not a technology. You know, not trusting everything. So making sure when someone tries to access a piece of data, should they be able to log in? Should they be able to see this data? Those types of things. There's something called Secure Access Service Edge, which monitors your cloud infrastructure, the connections between. Any modern SIEM or security information and event management system can not only monitor any local network stuff, but can also monitor your communications and the information on the cloud. And something I want to say about that, when I was talking prevention versus detection, we actually have a client who had a breach. By the way, breach is a legal term. You don't want to just be throwing around the B word, okay?
Incident.
It's better, yeah.
It's better, but it's only marginally.
Yeah, exactly.
Marginally better.
That works for both keywords.
And, yeah. And depends on the context that you're using it in, right? And they had a honest to goodness incident. They had someone that broke into their system, but because they had these technologies in place, and specifically because they had a SIM that was capturing all their logs and analyzing that data, it was someone who was under HIPAA. They were able to show through those logs that they did not actually have a breach because that specific healthcare information was never accessed by the threat actor. And because they had that technology and they could show definitively that the bad guy had not seen any protected health information, they did not have to pay any HIPAA fines, and they did not have to report, it was not a reportable incident, so they did not appear on the HHS wall of shame. And if any of you are in healthcare, that is the Health and Human Services, they actually published anyone, healthcare provider, anyone under HIPAA that's had a breach.
And there's all these, you know, word or letter salad that we're throwing back at you, SIM, XDR, EDR.
Yeah.
I mean, gone are the days where you can have your computer with your antivirus on there.
That's
and you're
useless.
fine.
Norton's the best.
It's
So
not-
super spyware is not the way to go anymore.
Again, defensive depth is the way I like to think of things, right? If you think about a castle, it's like, I think I'm gonna skip on the moat, you know, I don't need a moat on a castle.
I don't
It's
need a
just too much
drawbridge.
money, drawbridge, it's just too much. But it has to be that thing, I mean, if you wanna be as secure as is reasonable for your organization, you're not gonna skip on the drawbridge.
Right, it's all about risk. Every business has its own risk tolerance, has its own business objectives, and that's why you want to partner with someone like New River, because they understand that, and they'll take that into consideration and form a roadmap for you. They're not gonna say, oh yeah, day one, you need to deploy everything today. It's not physically possible. They have to consider your business objectives, they have to consider your risk tolerance, and from there, create a plan that makes sense to protect your business.
Or that plan needs to be that cyber liability insurance we were talking about.
Yeah.
Having a good lawyer.
Yeah, having a good lawyer.
What about expectations for, we'll call it for 2023, maybe going into 2024? What do you guys anticipate or think you're going to see in the cyber world?
From the bad guys or from the good guys?
We talk both. I mean, there are good guys out there too, fighting the
Yeah,
fight, right?
yeah.
What do y'all think we're going to see?
I think that these terms zero trust and SASE, I think they're gonna be things that are required.
You're gonna have to fill me in on SASE.
Yeah, SASE is Secure Access Service Edge. It incorporates some principles of zero trust and other ways to combine both your cloud and your network or infrastructure. So it does away with VPNs. You do secure, I'm having a brain fart, the web gateway. Oh, I'm having a brain fart, sorry. It's all kinds of more acronym soup. But it's an additional way to really expand your protection. Maybe instead of having a 6-foot wall now around your castle, now you have a 20-foot wall around your castle, kind of thing. Zero trust, because we're talking now about prevention, detection versus prevention. Zero trust is always there. If you think back, I should have given you the picture to put in here. Does anyone remember the old Windows versus Mac commercials? Remember the super cool Mac guy, right?
Yeah.
And the doofus Windows guy?
During the Steve Jobs era.
Yeah. So when Vista came out, remember user access control? Every time you tried to do something, your computer would ask you, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to allow your computer to escalate privileges to be an admin privilege? Are you sure you want to access this piece of data? Well, back then, the Mac was making fun of Windows for that. But guess what? Windows had it right. That's what zero trust is all about. You're going to have to protect your infrastructure, your data, everything with zero trust. People, back in the day, we thought nothing of using our admin credentials just to do everything because it was just easier. Now, you have to worry about privilege escalation, right? Because you don't want a bad guy to get hold of your admin credentials, right? So you only use your so I have admin credentials for certain things, but it only uses admin credentials now when I have to. Zero trust helps you manage that and make sure that people aren't using their privileged access when they shouldn't be. They're only using their regular user account until they need to escalate. So, brings in principles of privileged access management, identity access management, secure web gateways, that was what I think at the moment. Firewall as a service versus a hardware firewall. You're just gonna be seeing that. As far as bad guys, they've just gotten bolder and bolder. I mean, they do what I would call quadruple extortion. They'll, encrypt your files, they'll ransom you for that, then they'll ransom you because they, to say I'm gonna release your data unless you pay me more. Then, unless you pay me more, I'm gonna launch a distributed denial of service attack against you and bring you down. And now they're actually, I guess it would be, quintuple now, because now they're calling your clients, your customers, and saying, hey, did you know? Unless you pay me, I'm gonna call your clients. And the last thing they're doing is they're actually asking you, can you tell me what your cyber liability limits are? This is true stories. I mean, they just get bolder and bolder. And ChatGPT now, it won't write it can write a program for you, but I can assure you it's not gonna be without error. I can't say, hey, ChatGPT, write me some malware. But I can say, hey, ChatGPT, I can do it in parts. I can say, hey, show me how to access a database. Show me how to transform this data, change, search and replace. Show me how to use 64-bit encryption. You can have it write you the parts. So now the barrier to writing malware has decreased because anyone who's smart enough to have any programming knowledge can use ChatGPT, just like I used it to write phishing emails.
That's wild.
I mean, it's just wild. Yeah.
So what's to stop us to go to triple factor often? We've gone to multi, what's to stop us to go to the next level's triple?
Well, the next level is not triple. The
I
next
mean,
level is zero trust. But zero trust has been in the enterprise for a long time. And the answer to that is, as long as the threat actors evolve, we'll have to evolve too. It's a journey, it's not a destination. As long as they evolve, years ago, antivirus was great. It's all you needed.
So what's good today is not gonna be good next year.
Correct.
Possibly.
It's just
Just like you never had to budget for masks or hand sanitizer.
Well, look
Then
at
we
any
had a pandemic.
Look at any technology, really, right? Like, TVs were, I forget what they were, now they're like 1080, HD.
No,
whatever.
8K. We
Yeah,
have
so
8K TV.
Yeah.
But think of it this way too, antivirus is almost useless now.
Yeah.
You should really have an EDR. So as newer technologies have come off, some of those lower level ones may drop off.
What about from a legal standpoint? What do you think we'll see in the next year or two?
I think we'll see probably more cases involving ChatGPT and people misusing it, but being held liable. I think we'll see a lot of oopsie cases and people having very bad cases.
Yeah.
And incorporating it into their businesses. More companies, what company was mentioned earlier, that are losing like their intellectual property.
Samsung.
That's right. Like you're losing intellectual property rights. Probably a lot of data breach cases. Which
ChatGPT was breached.
Mhm. And just people even putting data into there and the ramifications of that, I think, over the next year, we'll see, I think, the full force of people misusing it and trying to use it in their work and how that backfires.
Sure.
And by the way, I wasn't suggesting you uninstall your antivirus.
Please don't.
We're not quite there yet.
What about you, Jeff?
I agree with what our panelists said. So, smishing is SMS phishing, right? I don't know if you've gotten some of those before. And then there's spear phishing where somebody tries to impersonate somebody or impersonate me or tries to get access to my
Deepfakes.
information.
Through using ChatGPT?
Actually, had spear smishing the other
Spear
day where a couple of our guys got text messages, allegedly from me, not from a number, saying, hey, it's Jeff, Alex, how, they didn't respond, right?
Yeah.
I would have been tempted to play along, but
Yeah.
it's probably a bad idea too. So I see that happening, and kind of like what Todd was saying back there, is like things are gonna evolve, so what's good now, it's not gonna be good in 12 months from now. We'll just have to respond to threat actors' behavior as we see them and be aware of that landscape. And that's sort of what we do, is keep tabs on that and deploy things as needed to protect and manage our risk.
Yeah, and I don't think your slide has come up yet about the people, process, and technology, but this is probably a good place to talk about that with that question.
There's the
Oh, yeah, the
that's
CIS, DH, yeah. And there are 3 levels, ID 1, 2, and 3. So there's a fundamental level, I guess an intermediate, and an advanced. But you don't necessarily have to do everything under every one of those levels, but they're very, very easy to understand, like you said. But yeah, but as far as people, process, and technology, I'm a nerd. I love to talk about the technology, but people and processes are just as important. What happens to that 3-legged stool if you take away one of those legs? 75% of breaches are due to human error. That could be someone clicking on a phishing link. That could be a misconfiguration of a software that a person has misconfigured. That could be malicious insider, malicious outsider. And that's actually gotten better. So that 75% are due to user error. The year before it was 82%. So security awareness training is really important. And you think of the old con that still happens. Bob in finance gets the email that says, hey, this is your CEO, Sue, and if we don't pay this vendor right this minute, and oh, by the way, all their wire transfer information has changed, and Bob sends that payment. Why did he send that payment? Number 1, he wasn't trained never to click on anything. And number 2, there was no process for him to follow. Maybe the process is we don't take requests for a certain amount via email, or we have to physically speak to our CEO, or there's 2 levels of protection for a certain amount of money being transferred. That still happens today, but that's not something you can prevent with technology.
And there's a lot of automated security work, so there are people who still do in-person trainings, and that's fine. But there's some pretty good tools out there that provide that automated security awareness training. They'll simulate phishing you, right? See if you get you to click on a link. You click on that link, it'll go to some training. It'll give micro training. So we have ours does weekly 3-minute trainings with quizzes that we have to pass, and there's annual training. And don't forget about new hire onboarding.
And offboarding. Offboarding, yes.
Truth be told,
Processes for offboarding.
we do partner with New River for our IT. We do that, and the office culture from an IT, or well, I don't know if it's called IT, but cyber standpoint, it's changed, and it's actually pretty cool. You know, somebody will get one of those phishing emails, and I can hear in the office, hey Nancy, did you just get this email? Does that seem right? And she's like, yeah, I just got the same one too. It's, and so we've got that now culture of, hey, one, it's okay to ask a question if you got a random email. And it's been cool, and then within that program, it does score you how you're doing, and so then your peers can see. And we got a couple that really like to stay at the top. And again, that's great. They're doing these trainings willingly now, learning in a fun way. I mean, it's a great
Gamifying that.
It really is
a long way to make it fun, and the trainings are not awful. You can tell trainings being dry, and it's not that bad.
It's like 3 minutes, a week, and you learn new stuff. So.
And even somebody, we can all have weak moments, right? We can all wake up.
Because you get busy.
Before you get that cup of coffee,
Yeah.
click on one thing. We can all, but if we're all constantly exposed to that stuff, it does help.
Yeah.
And you mentioned culture. So one of the best things you can do to protect your organization is to foster that culture of cybersecurity like they're doing with the training and the gamification. But not just that, you have to have a culture where if someone does accidentally click on a link,
I clicked on the link.
yeah, that they feel safe to say, hey, I clicked on the link, so you can mitigate whatever damage they've caused. Because if you don't have that kind of culture and a few days goes by or a week goes by, that could become the B word.
Well, I know we've covered a lot, certainly thrown out a lot of letters and acronyms. Some of which I don't know, like onion.
Onion's not an acronym.
Well, but I know, but it's a word or whatever. I was just grouping it all together. I'm not an IT, okay? Anyway, I also know that we got our food. So what we were thinking, now that we have the food, if you guys want to go ahead and grab some food, and then we'll do maybe a question, quick Q&A type session. Those are 2 letters. So please help yourself, and then as you eat, we'll just bounce off questions for each other. Feel free to ask. There's no dumb question. I think the old version is the only dumb question is the one asked. So please feel free. It's in a safe place from the happy trust tree. So help yourself with food.
In our community, we pay attention to the other side of the coin. We have these incidents, clearly things are illegal or happening, and I don't know who to call or what to do. I don't know if you can speak towards that, or speak to any of the folks here if they have an incident that should be reported into who. That's not.
That's a lot of different areas.
I'm sorry, and
So-
thank you for letting me pick on it.
No, that's totally fine. Just to give you a little bit of background, when we say cyber and what I did in my position, I worked internet crimes against children. And so a lot of times we get stuck even when you're talking about the definition of cyber, like what are we looking at? And a lot of people think of cybersecurity as in breaches, data breaches, our own information, but are we protecting our families? Are we protecting ourselves with the information that we're sharing while we're online? And so Christiansburg has been, well, it still is, the only agency that has a full-time internet crimes against children investigator. So even though I retired in 21, there's still a full-time investigator for that. Blacksburg used to be part of what's called the Southern Virginia Task Force. If anybody's been around since the 90s, it used to be called Blue Ridge Thunder. Anybody remember that? I had Eric Estrada was our spokesman, and we had Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, we had Shaquille O'Neal back in the day. And so that SOVA task force used to take care of all of Virginia. So no matter what agency that you're at or what jurisdiction you live in, if something is criminal in nature based on any type of breach or identity theft, which is going to be a big one, or anything involving your children, all the agencies around here have been informed, they're all connected, and as the Christiansburg, we were the district coordinators for 9 surrounding counties, so all the way down to Galax. So everybody kind of reports to Christiansburg. So even if they don't have the resources or they're not really sure of the answer, they know who to go to. hopefully. And a lot of times they still come to me, which I'm okay with that too. So if you guys ever need anything, Jeff will get you my contact information. I love helping people in my community still to this day. So I don't know about like specifics for types of laws or.
Right, well, I think that the answer is well, start pressing work, right? They'll know, if not who they're, probably not, and they'll know who to contact with the FBI or whoever else. Is that fair?
And we really don't even, so a lot of times it's not going to be a federal offense unless, it can be a federal offense, but a lot of times depending on the type of cyber crime, would we get FBI involved? A lot of times, like I worked with Homeland Security.
Okay.
So it might be a different agency that would be specialized in that. We'll probably talk to you. I'm actually headed to the UK because some of my cases were involving different jurisdictions. And so Homeland Security, so I have a case out in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pending from 2019. So I did a lot of undercover chat investigations. And so it really depends on the agency based on the type of crime that you're looking at. But if it's something, even some of the cyber, even to determine whether or not it's federal, is if the victim and the suspect live in different states. And so you can work it in either jurisdiction. So if an officer ever tells you, well, the suspect's in Nigeria, okay, a lot of times they're gonna be like, we're not gonna put the resources into that. But you as the victim, you still have the right to have the report created here, and they can determine whether or not to contact somebody in the other country to work that side of the case if it ends up going to court, if you want to press charges. So don't ever feel like just because they're in a different country that it can't be prosecuted and that you can't keep moving forward on it here because you can't. So that's what the law says, that we can either prosecute where the victim lives or where the suspect lives.
And I'm unaware of what law enforcement does in terms of their, just knowing something's happened. How often is it happening? Who is it impacting? I mean, see that that's valuable information. I don't know that anybody is collating stuff that's happening from our side.
Right, and it probably isn't on like a business aspect. Like if it's not happening in that jurisdiction and they're not seeing the reports come in, then their knowledge is going to be limited to know that that's an issue. And so that's why I love that you're having these types of discussions, because then as business owners, you can start getting together and you can start having the conversation in your offices with other colleagues. Some of you are on the Rotary Club or Chamber, and you're gonna start talking about it so you know when to report and if it's been happening somewhere else.
As of several years ago, I'd add too that based on my experience with working white collar crime as far as fraud is concerned with investigations, is the U.S. Attorney's Office, generally speaking, if it's under $100,000 in fraudulent cybercrime, they won't touch it. You're not going to get much assistance from the U.S. District Attorney's Office from the federal level if it goes overseas. And most of these do go overseas with the fraud crimes. I mean, this is your internet cafes in Africa soliciting information or whatever in order to penetrate local businesses where they may be fraudulently taking anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. The U.S. District Attorney's Office has such a caseload, so many reports of fraudulent crimes under $100,000 that if it's under $100,000, it's going to get added to the list of everybody else's things from my experience. Now, of course, that could have changed since then, but seriously, it's probably only gotten worse.
I think with the amount of reports that come in over and over, I agree to that. It just depends on the type of information that you have and how much push you're going to get. So I think as a victim, you have the right to just keep pushing and find the right person that will take your case. I mean, we've had situations with Homeland Security that the agent is like all about it and they're doing the investigation, and then it goes to prosecution and they're like, well, she was 16, and you're like, Yeah, but she's 16, but the things that she's being told to do, and she has mental health issues, like, that's not appropriate. You know, so it just depends on the agent, and I think the victim who's willing to keep pushing and find somebody that can help you. And with the National White Collar Crime Center, we actually offer technical assistance to law enforcement. All of our training, we do, like the financial, we do white collar crime, we do high-tech crime, cyber crime, we do forensic, digital forensics, and we do intelligence. We offer all of our training and assistance free to law enforcement around the U.S., some to the world, depending on their jurisdiction, and we offer the free technical assistance for them too. So we have so many different expertise in our office that, depending on the question, might go into that person helping.
Thank you. George, this thing of
It's fine. It's good.
I just want to make sure that
Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Totally different question.
No worries.
So, I don't really think this has a lot of implications on security protocol that we're talking about, but I'm curious to how these threat actors find targets. Like, we got hit the other day with a bigger phishing attack than we usually do. That training, that training. So we're a small nonprofit, we're a domestic violence shelter. We keep very little information, but it's enough to compromise people's safety, but it's not financial information. We don't keep social security numbers, things like that. So number one question is how they find us, and number two, why would they select someone like us as a target?
So they're rarely being directly targeted.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually that someone has purchased a phishing as a service campaign, and it's all scripted. Nobody's manually doing that. They've purchased something, they automatically just send, we call it pray and spray. And you just see what you can get. They're literally just casting that line out there, fishing, and seeing who's gonna bite.
Well, we have I forgot what it's called.
Now, I'm not saying you're not being targeted,
Right.
you could be, but normally it's just the pray and spray.
Yeah, and I understand that they cast a wide net, but like, for example, we have a very specific email suffix. So are they just randomly mashing letters together and seeing what they get? Or how is it that we're?
Suffix or your prefix, your suffix, the end or the beginning?
The end.
Okay, so what is,
It's at wrcnrb.org.
okay, is that not, it's probably, it has to be a registered
Okay,
domain.
exactly, that's how they're getting it. Okay,
Or,
that's,
somebody could have harvested that email from all kinds of
And this is how your personal life leads into your business life. There's still a lot of people today that would use their business, do not use your business email for anything but your business. Because if you're using your business email address to shop on Amazon or to access Facebook, guess what? You're exposing yourself.
And you know what today and tomorrow is, right? Amazon.
Oh, yes,
Amazon
Prime
Prime
Day. Yes, I'm fully aware it's Prime Day.
I wonder how many employees of our companies,
It's higher computer.
how's their work computer?
You should keep your business and your personal as separate, to protect yourself personally. You should keep it separate.
Well, the problem is a lot of those accounts have a business account, like you have
Yeah.
to register your business account.
Right, but that's for business purposes.
Yeah. You're right, but you're still on Amazon now with all of the
Yeah,
masses.
but if you're using, I'm just saying keep your business and your personal separate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question. We have multiple websites, and our brands the company, markets the company. And we also, we have profiles, titles, email addresses. I'm assuming that that's probably not the best to market company information, because I feel like that's one of our
That's all
focus
points.
points.
I can give you my answer. I mean, I think that stuff's already out there. I mean,
So there are definitely people in our field that obfuscate all of that stuff.
There
right?
are.
There are people that will buy like a random domain name, and anything.newrepew.com goes to the random domain name that people will can't get intelligence on, so people put fake info on LinkedIn, Facebook, and so forth to try to keep that social engineering from happening or know where that social engineering is coming from, or at least make your identity a little fuzzy so that you can. I was just thinking back to what Molly was saying here. While we're all targets for that spray and pray, almost all of us have some sort of personally identifying information on our systems, one way or the other. It could be even the kind of sensitive information we were talking about. It might be employees' health information. It might be social security numbers. It might be EINs. So, all of that stuff has value to the bad actors, and if they have access to that information, they can sell it.
So what you're saying is they're probably after our employee information, our client information?
I think probably they're after money. That's pretty much the one thing. But what's money? It could be email, password. But they might try everywhere else. If I knew your password for LinkedIn, maybe I know for Facebook, maybe I know for your bank.
That's why you should use a password manager, but not LastPass.
What is a password?
Yeah.
And Jeff, what you're saying really too is that they don't really know what they're doing. So they're sending out to Buildings Resource Center, they don't know what they're trying to get, they're just trying to get something. And once they get in there, they're gonna, yeah.
I'd go even farther, that they don't care what information you have. They know it's important to you, and that's why they're gonna charge you.
Yeah. I mean, how long could you stay in business without access to your data? And so password manager, it's basically a piece of software, and even personally, it costs about $60 a year for a family subscription, 60, 65, somewhere around there, US dollars. And you can store your username and password, so you can be using not easily guessable passwords. And
Password 123, is that bad?
as long as you put an exclamation point in there, you're good. And so I have one that I use that uses on my phone, I use it on my computer, and when I come to a site, I can allow the password manager to autofill that, so I literally don't even know most of my passwords.
I know one or two passwords.
I know it's you. I know a
Password
handful
manager,
of passwords.
And it's one. If you don't know what that stuff is and want to learn, hit me up and we'll talk about it more. We're using NordPass in the house right now. It used to be LastPass, but there was a data breach.
And they handled it very poorly.
They handled it very poorly.
So you're suggesting that we use LastPass to
And change every single last one of your passwords.
We did do that.
Yes, you should move away from LastPass. And it's not really the fact that they had a breach, it's the fact the way they handled the breach. And also, nobody can know everything about everything, right? So I did a webinar with one of my colleagues, Bryson Benlock, who works in, he's like the smartest of the smart in an area we call our cyber research unit, which they literally live and breathe threat actors and attacks and all kinds of stuff. We did a webinar about this, and he explained, honestly, what it is you should look for if you're looking for a password manager. That LastPass didn't always encrypt enough time to do enough rotation of the encryption. It was bound to happen. And there's even been rumor that the LastPass thing may have been an insider. And that's really just a rumor. So I'm just propagating rumors now. But, I mean, it's just kind of too coincidental. But, from a real life information from an attack, so I live in Tampa, Florida. And the city of Oldsmar processes some of the water, so there's a water plant in Oldsmar, Florida. And there actually was a real attack, a real threat actor got into their system. And the only reason that threat actor was caught is because someone happened to be sitting at the screen and saw what was going on and stopped him. Now, of course, they had other protections. They may have stopped him from poisoning the water supply, but it wasn't caught by automated means, so maybe they wouldn't have stopped him from poisoning the water supply. And that feeds the city of Tampa, which is a relatively large city. It's not much.
That's a great city,
Yeah.
because that's my industry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's called SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So every wastewater plant, every water plant has them. Now Jeff knows that we're air gapped, which is obviously where we want to stay, but that's getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
Each of you guys are ratepayers. and y'all want your rates to stay low, and that causes us to try to do things remotely and less people. I mean, so the panel, I know you are over the water, you do the water quality here, and we're probably heading your way soon, as far as scaling.
Right.
So to that question, where do you see that going in the future? Because SCADA is ubiquitous in the water and wastewater industry.
I love that. So yeah, it terrifies me.
Yes.
What's possible through SCADA, and thinking back to the attack on Iran's centrifuges,
Yes.
right? That was an attack on SCADA infrastructure. It did some, in my opinion, pretty nice damage to
Yes.
Iran's nuclear program. But what happens when it starts drinking water? What happens? I mean, Natalie pointed out the zero trust framework, and we will be knowing this term in a couple of years. It'll be much more common. But I think that's sort of the concept here is going to help protect those kinds of systems. Okay. First off, who are you? Are you who you say you are? Okay. Is your endpoint okay? Is it protected by XDR or whatever other things that are appropriate in your environment? Okay. Is that application that you're trying to run, is it okay? Do you have appropriate permissions on that? Is the network okay for you to access? Is the infrastructure surrounding your data okay? And then maybe we'll let you see the data, the underlying values of that data or that system of stuff that's SCADA. So this is a model that we're all gonna know and love here in a couple of 3 years. It's happening. Natalie, what am I missing here about that
You're not, that's probably the best way to explain it. Like he says right there, it's no implicit trust. Now you log onto your machine and implicitly trust that it's you. You implicitly are trusted to access data in your OneDrive or whatever. No implicit trust. You think MFA is bad, you want to complain about MFA. But, you know, unfortunately, as the bad guys evolve, we have to as well.
I honestly, I mean, truth be told, I love MFA. It makes me feel like a super agent, you know, like in the whole like, mission policy. I think it's cool. I really do. That's true story. I love it.
And while Natalie is spot on about these proxy attacks and will capture that cookie, still, if there's something easy we all can do, get it all done. I mean, Facebook, LinkedIn, I mean, at a minimum, you can be embarrassed badly. And at a maximum, you could be having some new person, you hit
You
up
could
your
endanger your
grandparents.
family.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything. Back to the password managers.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, you know, protecting your family, don't allow your Facebook stuff or your Instagram stuff, don't have that public. None of you are influencers, are you? Social media influencers? Oh, George's. Well, if you're not a social media influencer, please make everything as private as you can. And from time to time, if you're using Instagram or Facebook, you do need, or Twitter, you need to pay attention because they do, from time to time, change their privacy. And I'm not talking about the stupid post that says, hey, if you stand on your head and sacrifice a chicken and say cock-a-doodle-doo 5 times, you'll see all your Facebook friends show up again. That's not the one. But really, go into your privacy settings. Go into your settings and go to privacy. It's not hard to find. It's usually called privacy. And check your privacy settings. Don't allow friends of friends because you don't know who your friends are. You know, some people aren't judicious about who they let be their Facebook friends. Be careful who you're exposing your data to, honestly. Okay, so the password manager, it just allows you to create stronger passwords, not have knowledge of your password. They use very strong, the one I use uses very strong encryption technology. They don't have my password. Only if I lose my password, I'm just gonna have to off myself. You know?
What is it?
It is, no, that's all of you.
And this thing will hassle you if you have a weak password.
Yes, it will. It'll tell
hassle
you.
if you don't have unique passwords.
And it'll tell you too if one of your, most people will tell you whether your password's been involved in a breach.
Yeah.
I have a question. How seriously do you take an email that says from Google saying you have a critical security alert?
Not at all. I go to my Google account and change my password or look at my privacy settings. I never click on that link.
They're not gonna send you anything.
Google doesn't care about you. So So, Google for the most part is free, Facebook for the most part is free, Instagram is free. Do you know what they're trading in? Yeah. Your data.
So what do you tell an employee, or what should the protocol be if they click on a phishing link, quote, training, don't do it, but if they do, is it disconnect from the network or what?
Oh, no.
What do you?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody does it.
Right.
Everybody does it. I didn't take my own advice. I once clicked on a phishing link, and it was a phishing test campaign. And why did I do it? Because I was in a hurry. I was trying to get something done. I was trying to get out the door. I was running late, and I didn't stop and relax. The minute I clicked it, I knew what I'd done, and I called the CISO. I'm like, I cannot believe you caught me. I just clicked on that. Don't you dare tell my boss.
It happens. I clicked on one of the UPS ones because I was expecting a package. I was in a hurry.
I keep getting that.
Yeah, I just got a UPS one, and I'm expecting a package too, and I'm not
It
clicking on
went
that.
straight through to the phishing simulation. Thank goodness it's not,
Yeah, but
I clicked on it.
you should,
Happens to all of us.
if
But
they're reporting it to you and it's not a regular occurrence, a carrot always works better than a stick. Explain to them what they did wrong and why they did it wrong and offer some remedial training. If it's someone who's clicking on a phishing link multiple times a day, there needs to be a stick involved. But I mean, everybody does it once in a while. None of us are perfect.
day in and day out, it's probably being asked to be released in the industry from employees, so that's probably not usual to happen. But even these bad actors, they want you to hurry. There's always going to be that urgency involved. It's like, you got to do this now. Send that payment now, or our company's in trouble.
Yeah.
I need grandma. I need help now. This is Jeff. I need bail money.
Another Western Union. When you do phishing testing, and I know that you guys would never do this kind of phishing testing, but I've heard of other companies that'll do phishing testing like, hey, if you're the first employee to complete this training, you get a $100 Amazon gift card, and it's phishing training. That's not nice. Don't do things that are mean. Don't do things that say, hey, you gotta go to HR because you're getting a raise. Don't do mean things, because then that is not building a good culture of cybersecurity, right?
The town of Christiansburg likes to send emails, I just call them out. They like to send out emails where if you click on the phishing link, you have to take Kevin Minnick's 1 hour training, where it's the same daggone training you've done for 5 years.
Yeah, that's
Watch the
painful.
video, and the last one I got was from my supervisor asking me to submit something to a secure folder. The problem is I've taught the introduction to forensic science at Radford University for the last 5 years, and my supervisor taking up in my class this semester. And I thought he wanted me to submit
Like a Dropbox.
the class where I've been teaching
Yeah.
class.
It was coincidence.
It was very coincidental, but
Sure it was.
they simulated from my supervisor this email with this Dropbox secure folder, and I was like, oh, he wants me to submit the stuff from the class I used to teach, which was teach this semester, to the Dropbox folder, and it was a friggin' phishing. So now I've got to take Kevin Minnick's 1 hour class and beat my head against the wall. It's super annoying.
Is there any program in Christiansburg that does do cyber trainings, like you can use 3 minutes per week or not?
There, every 1 or 2 years, we have to go through retraining on IT security, and then at least once a month, sometimes twice, I will get a simulated phishing email, and if I don't phish it from my email, I have to take 10 minutes friggin' retraining.
You might have to do memorized.
I do. I don't even. The problem is, this is what I'll warn you if you're a supervisor of your agency. I don't even watch the videos anymore. I sit there and I do something else while I was playing, and then I sit there and take the test until I pass it because I'm so sick of taking it. I mean, I hate to say that, but because
It's too redundant.
It's very redundant.
Get lost in the.
Well, it's interesting, I mean, that's where
That's a
you're talking-
stick.
you're just checking a box that,
Yeah.
we do this for the insurance company, we do this.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily, you're not, are you really
The employees
implementing
aren't
it?
really, yeah.
I'm sure police have competing priorities of time and money and all that other stuff, and I would argue this is probably not the best use of anybody's time, or the
No.
best way of educating people about things.
No.
So that just continual reinforcement, I think, is important. Annual training is important, onboarding, offboarding.
So what I heard is if you click more than once, you have to watch the minute training first.
The same one that you did 6 months ago.
Yes.
Same one
And that
I've
I
done
would
for the
get.
last 5.
Right.
That is a stick.
Yeah.
That is a stick, not a carrot. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll just comment real quick on identity fraud. In the event, we've been talking about a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself via cybersecurity, but in the end, when all of those fail, ultimately, what your greatest fear is, I think, is financial loss to you personally and your family.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that we all live on, at some point, I think all of us live on a certain amount of credit in this world. And just remember that there's some steps you can take to, in the event all of this fails, there's 3 credit reporting agencies in the United States. There's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And you have 2 choices with each of those. You go to buy a car, okay, and you go to Sheila or you go to buy a car. They're going to run your credit. When they do, that credit report is pulling from TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax, and sometimes it's a combination of 3. What you can do, you can go to each one of those credit reporting bureaus, and you can do one of 2 things. You can either freeze your credit, or you can lock your credit. Generally speaking, each one of those credit reporting bureaus will charge you to lock your credit, because locking your credit is very convenient. If I lock my credit through a program with each credit reporting bureau, I can simply go online and visit each one of those credit reporting agencies and hit log in, hit unlock, go buy my car, because they're going to run my credit, and when I get home, I can lock it back. Very convenient for locking and unlocking your credit for when you need to access your credit.
Yep.
However, you can also freeze your credit. Freezing your credit with each credit reporting bureau costs roughly $15 to $20 with each credit reporting bureau. And when you freeze your credit, by law, each credit reporting agency can have upwards to 10 or 15 business days to unfreeze your credit. Okay, so it takes a little bit longer, but it's not like a service you have to pay for every month. Once you freeze your credit with each credit reporting bureau, it's $15 to $20 one time, and you can freeze it and unfreeze it as many times as you want, and you shouldn't have to keep paying. Okay, but it's a little bit more inconvenient. You kind of have to plan for when you're going to access your credit. I also encourage you, and I'm hypocrite when I say this, but if you have children, go ahead and freeze their credit, because what people across the United States are doing, bad actors, are they're obtaining your children's social security numbers, and they are opening up accounts, just credit card, that make up fake information. Oh, you know, my name is such and such, and I work at such and such, and I make so much money a year. Here's my social security number. And the next thing you know, you're a kid when they get 18 years old and they're trying to establish their own credit, already have a screwed up credit history. And let me tell you, it's extremely work. The reason it actually works, what happens is when you freeze your credit, right now I have 1 bureau, I think it's Experian or Equifax, frozen. My other 2 are open. But if I go to buy a car right now, when they try to run my credit through TransUnion, because that's the credit reporting agency that they use, because I have it frozen through Experian, it won't come back. All right? But I encourage you to do all 3, because that ensures that you're getting it right.
Yeah, and you should monitor your credit. A lot of credit cards now offer free credit monitoring, and you can set them up to send you alerts when something happens with your credit. You should do that as well.
Right.
And you can monitor your credit reports.
You can pay, there's some companies out there that protect your credit and offer you insurance in the event that you, up to $1 million of policies or whatever to insure your credit. But honestly, all you have to do to really protect your credit and your social security number and all that is to freeze your credit reports with each credit reporting bureau, and then what you do is, you're entitled to a free copy of your credit report.
Once per year.
Once per year. So what you do is every quarter, you got 3 credit reporting bureaus in the United States. Every quarter or 4 months, first 4 months, you request one from TransUnion. You check it for accuracy against what you know you owe for and what it's reporting. If it's good, you're good. 4 months later, you check it with Experian. You check it for accuracy, it's good, you're good. 4 months later, you check it with Equifax. Okay, that's the cheap way of doing it. Freeze your credit, ask for one free copy of your credit report from each credit reporting bureau every 3 or 4 months, and it's one-on-one.
It's great information.
It is.
Yeah.
And to piggyback on one of the first things Eric mentioned, is like, you can do all this stuff right. You could have the tightest security in the world,
Yeah, Equifax was free.
and you can still fail.
Yeah.
Right? So, but if you're not taking some of these steps, you're just, acting in the lowest thing, for sure.
Well, I know we've run right up to the 7:30 timeframe. We're going to be hanging around here for a little bit after. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to come up and ask us. Or again, we've got business cards. You can contact us anytime. Feel free to reach out. And if you can't get a hold of one of us, you probably can get a hold of one of the other. We can pass along information there too. But most of all, just really appreciate you all coming, spending time with us. I know cyber sometimes can be more of a dull or non-fun subject to talk about, but I really appreciate the last 2 hours, hanging with us, and we can never do anything for you.
Thanks everyone for taking the time, really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
So thank you guys.